What's up, beautiful people, and welcome to Taking Over the Photo Pit, a music photography podcast held by me, Boston Schultz, where I interview badass music photographers. And today we are sitting down with Mae Krell, who I am so impressed with everything that they do because they're a musician, they're a photographer, like so many things. And I can't wait to have Mae dive into all of the things that they do. So I'm like speechless at this point because I love talking to people that do a ton of things in the industry and just like really thrive. And I just love seeing all of Mae's work, and I just can't wait to dive into my questions. So we're just going to jump right into this interview. Hey Mae, I am so excited to finally have you on here because I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. And I think that we talked a few years ago for one of your publications, so we'll get into that.
Oh my god, yeah, like so long ago.
But I would love to have you just kind of introduce yourself and give like, I always have this question as like, what is your life story? Like, what brought you into the music industry? What brought you into being a photographer, a musician, where you're at now? Like, tell us all the good details.
Well, honestly, and this is like, so I always loved music, right? But I was really shy. And so like, and my little sister, who's now 17, is actually properly an actress. Like obviously lower level, she's done like a movie, like with like, that was like a Woody Allen film, and she's done like a ton of commercials, like all this stuff. And so I was always just kind of like, I liked to sing, but I was like very quiet, and like Ness was the like performer, you know, of the house. So it was like never like a thought that I would like properly go into music. And then I went to my first concert when I was like 14, and totally just got obsessed with live music. And I'd never been to anything before because I didn't like grow up. I grew up in New York City, but I just never been to a concert. And I was like, how do I go to shows? I love live music. I have no money. So I bought like a really shitty, I think it was like the Canon, like it was like pre the like XTI series. Like it was like a DSLR, but it was total trash. And I like bought it on eBay for like $30. And then I started sneaking it into venues in a tampon box at like really, really small shows that were like $10, like Mercury Lounge or something. And I went to like 3 gigs with friends, and then had the audacity to like email a couple like random small publications, which this was 2013. Okay. So like there weren't really any small like teen run publications at the time. So it was like whatever. And so this one guy from Texas emailed me back and was like, you have balls. Let me see if you can write too, because my photos were never like bad, but they weren't like good, you know what I mean? So if you were gonna like put them up somewhere, like I never did the like vignette editing, like so like it was never like that bad, but if you were gonna like properly have that on a pub, you would need like a really solid review, you know, to like back up like the okay photos. And so I guess I was lucky that I was like an okay writer, and so he was like, okay, your writing is like good enough to back this up, and sent me out to a couple shows. The first one I did was Foster the People, and it was like proper media pass, and I was maybe 15, like maybe, like I don't know. And then I did like 2 gigs for him writing reviews, and then I guess I picked up my speed. I did some Googling, like editing online and shit. I didn't have Lightroom yet. And he was like, okay, your photos are good enough, you don't have to write anymore. And so from there I just started shooting a couple gigs, and things went really, really fast. Within like a month of starting to shoot for them, I had a pretty solid portfolio because I was doing a ton of shows, started reaching out to a couple other people. And like for reference of how quick, within, let me think, a year and a half of me properly shooting shows, I did a show for Rolling Stone. So like very, very fast. I don't have no idea. Like don't. And we're always like, how did that work? And I was like, I don't know. Like, so yeah, I mean, that was the proper entrance into photography. And then do you want like how that wound into other things, or like not yet?
Yeah. No, because I'm so curious because you've done so many things, and I love talking about this. And I think that I say this in my intros, like I love talking to people who do a lot because I feel like I do a lot, and it's like nice to be around like-minded people. But like every time I see your social media posts and stuff, I'm like, holy shit, they're doing so much. Like, the publication, like, music route, the, like, Publicist,
Really
like,
all
let's
together.
just dive into it. Like, how did this branch out to everything else?
Yes. So once I started shooting shows, I think I always, like, secretly, like, knew I wanted to play music, but, like, I didn't know how to play instruments yet. And, like, I grew up playing a little bit of piano. But, like, growing up in New York City, you, like, apply to middle schools, like, take a test and interview for middle schools. Like, I don't know how much you know about it, but it's a horrible, horrible process. And so when I got into, like, a good middle school, I literally stopped taking piano lessons because I did not have enough time because I had so much homework.
Wow.
Like, it was, like, wild. And so I, like, didn't really properly play anything. And I had written really, like, bad poetry on Tumblr. And this is, like, a whole other life, but I had, like 200,000 followers on Tumblr.
Oh my god.
When I was like 14, and like published a book partnered with Amazon of like really bad 14-year-old poetry, and it actually at one point charted at #1 in women in poetry above Milk and Honey, which was like the funniest moment of my life.
Oh my god.
I know. So I'd like written like some bad poetry and I didn't really play, so I hadn't like made it into lyrics yet. And then once I started shooting shows, I was like, oh, I really want to be doing that instead. And so then I started writing songs. Like, nothing I ever did was like that bad. It just wasn't good. Because like Monsters, which is like my second single, it was like the third song I ever wrote. So like, It's not like anything was bad. It was just like embarrassing looking back, you know? Yeah, so I started writing stuff. I like kind of like figured out like 3 chords on the guitar, which like at the time was enough. And then I was like, okay, how do I get on stage? Like, how do I do that? And so I continued shooting because I was like, this is the closest I can get for now. And then at around like 16, I was like, I had a handful of songs and I was like, I really want to try to do this. And I remember I told my parents and they like laughed in my face. They were like, literally, what do you mean? Like, you don't even talk to people. Like, what do you mean you want to play music? Which is so funny. My mom like loves to be like, remember when I laughed at you and then you like did all these things? Ha ha ha.
Well, I imagine like being shy, if you are like really shy, to be on stage and like be a musician would be such a complete jump from that.
Oh yeah. Well, now I've kind of like put together this like extrovert persona for like whatever reasons, but at the time I was like, I really like playing these songs, and I think I created this disconnect when I started playing open mics and stuff where I just turned it off. I was like, okay, now I'm playing the song. So I could be like knees weak shaking, and the second I started playing it just disappeared.
Wow.
And then it came back the second I got off stage. And so I kind of like got into this thing. I was like playing some open mics. Rest in peace, the Sidewalk Cafe in New York, but it was like a lot of really proper singer-songwriters played like their first shows there. It's like very little. And so I played there once and my parents came and then they were like, oh, okay, you should try doing this. But it took me like writing songs and playing like a gig, which was so funny. Yeah, and so, and around the same timeline I started Tongue-Tied, I think I was just bored.
You didn't have enough things going on.
Exactly. No, a lot. I had a friend, Chloe, who was shooting like high level fashion work. And both of us would always get like looked down on the second people found out how old we were at the time. And so both of us were kind of like, well, that's annoying. We'll keep shooting for our like proper pubs. But like maybe instead of reaching out to like random ones when we want to cover something, we should just start our own. So we like just started our own website. I was like 15, she was like 16 maybe, but this was like, we're talking about, I think there were maybe like Rookie and like maybe like 3 other teen run publications. Like now it's like nice because all these girls are running publications, but like at the time nobody was doing it. This is like 6 years ago. I'm sure you know timeline wise that like it all kind of came up slow and then all of a sudden everybody was running a site, which I think is amazing. But, like, it was not happening then. And so it made it a lot easier for us to get, like, press passes and stuff.
Yeah. Because
we had a decent readership and we were doing something nobody else was doing.
Yeah.
And so I started shooting shows for that. I started playing a little bit. And then, yeah, I think that's, like, my teenage year projects. Yeah, that was my teenager project.
That's awesome. There's a lot of things that come up when I talk to people a lot about just like publications in general, and I think that you kind of like hit it already, is that there are so many kind of like self-run publications now. And I think that a lot of younger people did like start going that route because they realized that there was like this weird amount of ageism and people being like, oh, you're way too young, so therefore like I'm not going to get you a photo pass. And then people were like doing it on their own,
and they were like, well,
yeah, so they're like, this is the route now. And then all of those publications started like really to grow. But like, is Tongue Tied still like actively something that you're pursuing? Are you still trying to like grow it? Do you suggest other people create their own publications? Like,
this is like a really unpopular opinion, but like, no. Like at this point there's enough teen and like young people run publications that if you're trying to do something, as long as it's like in music, you shouldn't really be experiencing ageism from the like teen run pubs.
I agree.
And it's already so oversaturated that like the likelihood of you properly growing it, unless you're doing something different from someone else, is very low. And so, and this is, I'm talking about someone who like doesn't come from money to create this, right? Like someone who's just going to do it from the ground up by themselves. I just don't think it's worth it anymore. Unless like I knew this girl who was based in Texas, who she started her own zine like 6 or 8 months ago. And her whole thing was like that they do like a bi-monthly or something zine, but it was all hand collaged and handwritten and then scanned. And like people aren't really doing that, which is really cool. And so she like kind of rose up with the zine into really easy success very quickly. So if you have a like original idea, go off. But like if you're just going to start a music website, it's kind of like literature, for example, there's not enough lit sites. Go off with literature. Feature musicians and talk about their lyrics, you know? But like in terms of regular sites, there's just too much going on. And I think the more sites you start, the harder it's going to be for you to get it past to gigs. And so you might shoot for someone who like it already exists, you know?
Yeah.
Active in the sense that there's still stuff being posted. Like we do a weekly roundup of like the best submissions of the week. And we have 2 really great writers who go back and forth. One of them's actually in the UK, which is really cool. But we've kind of gotten to a spot where I am an adult and I have other focus. I say I'm an adult, like I'm not an adult, but I have like other focuses that are more important. And so I can maintain Tongue Tied on a very low amount of energy, but I can't continue growing it on that amount of energy. And granted, it has really good readership. And so Caro, my good friend who I work on bitch management with, does the socials for Tongue Tied, and then we have our writers, and we're kind of trying to find a high schooler who loves art and like wants to edit the magazine for like college probably purposes, like experience. So we're right now kind of in the search for someone who's really serious and wants to essentially take over it with our help to pass it on to like the next generation, to be able to 1, continue the site existence, but 2, give them experience they might not be able to get otherwise without funneling their energy into a new publication. So they're coming into a following.
Yeah.
You know, so we're kind of in the search now to find someone or a couple girls who want to take over.
That's fantastic. Well, if anyone's listening and you want experience, like reach out to me. Like that.
Hit me up.
That seems like such a great option because like there's a lot of work that goes into starting something, and even just like getting the first, like I was gonna say the first 100 followers, but even like the first 10 followers,
50,
like,
like anything.
Insane how hard it is to get people to like build that readership, that, you know, audience base. So I love that opportunity. So that's really, really cool. And you mentioned the Publicist side of this, so I want to dive into that. Like, it's
another project.
How and why did you get into this?
Into publicity?
Yeah.
Well, you know what it was? I toured my first EP cross-country DIY, 40-something shows, 35 states, like super wild. Which is another thing my mom laughed at me about. Like, I remember I came home to New York, I like moved back home, and I was like, Mom, what would you think if I went on tour this summer, and I had like just moved home and was rebuilding my relationship, so I like wanted her opinion, you know. And she was like, I don't know, like do whatever you want, but like with the thought that I wouldn't do it. And then like fast forward like 4 months, and I'm like sitting in her kitchen like mailing out posters to like 45 venues around the country, and she looks at me and she's like, oh my god, she's like, you're actually doing it? I was like totally kidding. Like the same thing over and over again with my parents always. It's so funny. I was like, you should believe me next time. But yeah, so when I was on tour, I could not drive yet. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, how do I not waste my time sitting in the back of the car, you know? And so I decided to start building up lists of publications and writers. And I was just like sitting in the back of the car, like that monkey meme typing, you know, just like updating. And I think I created like a 800 or 900 contact list over that tour. And I was pitching just like for fun. I wrote my first press releases. And because I had worked at a pub, I knew what a good press release looked like. So it was pretty easy to imitate, right?
Yeah.
And I think on tour, we like got like, we had a couple photographers out at shows, and we like did a handful of like interviews and photo shoots and announcement posts. And we're talking about like a small tour, like at like biggest like 200 cap venue on the West Coast, at smallest like a coffee shop, and people were properly coming out to do press on it, which was really cool. And so I think I had like a realization that if your lists are specialized enough and you're pitching the right way to the right people, they're always going to care. But you have to do it specialized and personalized. And so I kind of like held on to that, and I did my own press for a while. And at the back of my mind, I was like, you know, I'm kind of good at this and I don't find it draining. So maybe eventually I'll do it for other people. And that was like 2018. And then I got a job in the bakery, and then I worked as a bartender, and I was just like trying to make enough money properly where I could produce my music and like maintain it, right? And in New York City, in the West Village, you make really good money doing serving and bartending. So I didn't have a reason to go anywhere else or do anything else. And although I did try to be a receptionist for 2 days and like almost threw myself out the window. So that was like a good like learning that I can't do that. Yeah, good learning experience. And then COVID hit, and my friend Caro, who does the graphics and stuff, she was a full-time nanny. And so she was no longer nannying, and I was no longer bartending. And we obviously stayed busy with other stuff, but I finally had time. And I was like, you know what? Like, maybe I should try this. Like, worst case scenario, I pay $50 for a domain and don't use it and waste a little bit of my time. And best case, it ends up being something that works. And like, of course, the best case scenario happened. Like, I'm very much that type of character that just like pushes everything. Like, I put 150% or I don't put anything in. Since April, we've worked with 20 artists for graphic design, release, PR, like whatever, which is kind of like a lot for like a very short amount of time. And so I already had these like semi-developed lists. And so I just kind of went in with reaching out to like really, really little artists, like almost even smaller than like my following, which is pretty small, and was like, hey, I can do this for you for cheap. And I have these like little lists. And some people were like, okay. And then fast forward like a month or two, and I'd really built them up. Like, we're talking 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 contacts, like for like just indie and pop music. And so the more time passed, the larger the artists we reached out to, if that makes sense. And we have some pretty great clients on, like, we have Nick Hamilton, who's an actor. And so he has a really proper following, and he just did his like first transfer into releasing a single, and the single went really, really well. And I'm doing a release for Seasons right now, which are super cool girl group from LA. Their track came out today. So they were just like texting in the group chat. And so we've done a lot of really fun stuff, and we don't work with someone unless we're like obsessed with their music. Like, so like we're talking like Kara and I will be like driving around just like blasting one of our clients' songs. And that makes it fun too. Yeah. And the good part is that I can focus on that as a publicist, which gives me the financial place to pay for someone to do my business. And so then I go from business brain for someone else, and I can turn that off and go into music brain for myself. But I can't do business and music brain for myself at the same time. It just like doesn't work. Too focused on business. And so it's a nice in between of being able to do both. but not necessarily for myself, if that makes sense. But it's been good. It's been fun.
That's really cool. There's so much like of this industry that I don't know. I'll explain it as like I don't know how people do it, because the like Publicist side and like reaching out to people like even personally terrifies me. I hate sending emails and like hate talking to like people on a business level.
No,
so I'm
I get
just
that.
like I just like don't understand. But I love that you've been doing this, and like the idea that you said that you put like 150% into everything you do or nothing. I totally get that. Like that is so how I tackle a lot of things.
For sure.
So it's so funny to talk to someone else that's like-minded with that. And it's so great to hear you talk about growing all of these things. When it comes to like that side of the business, have you kind of learned from artists and other people that you're working with, like any tips for photography or graphics or like supporting musicians? Because I feel like a lot of people get lost working with like up and coming bands or local bands because they just like don't know what they need.
I think, and this is like, I don't know, this is problematic of us, but we like don't work with very small bands. Like our smallest band, they started off with like 200 monthly listeners, and we just did ads for them, and they jumped up to like 2,500 within like a month. And but in terms of PR, like our smallest clients are probably at like 15 to 20K monthly listeners, which is like not large, but it's definitely like not super starting off putting your music out.
Yeah.
And I think it's because both of us are doing this in addition to another job, which for me is music, and for Kara was now nannying again. And so we made an effort to make the services affordable, like essentially label services that are affordable for people who don't often get access to them. So like small artists, queer artists, artists of color, like all these kind of groups. And we have sliding scales for that as well. And so it's really hard when you're not charging a lot to have the time to create a brand with an artist.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And so we kind of work with people who come in at least knowing a little bit of what they need. They don't necessarily have to have a perfect handle of who their fan base is. That's something that we work on with them a lot of the time. But like we don't really work with people who are like super, super, super small. Even if only for the reason that we just can't do it personally with how much we charge, if that makes sense.
Got it.
But I think it's all about awareness. Like as a musician, like if you care, I think that you can figure that stuff out by yourself. Like you think about it like this. I am a singer-songwriter. I am a lesbian. I make sad music. Just those three things alone should be able to give me a handle of what my fan base is. It's probably going to be like queer teenagers, like skater kids, probably like folklore and Evermore Taylor Swift fans, Halsey fans, a little bit of alt kids, because everybody at the end of the day, I think, who likes pop music and even like more into like indie rock likes a singer-songwriter if they like emotionally get to them.
Yeah.
And so you look for like people who are fans of indie rock pop bands who like emotional music, like Folklore and Evermore from Taylor Swift's album are very much emotionally focused. Halsey's music, although like pop and electro pop at times, is very emotionally focused, et cetera, et cetera. And so like for fans of doesn't have to mean you sound the same. It just has to mean that people like the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so, appreciate that style.
For sure. Or like one of my interns at Bitch, they started their own band and they all love the 1975. And so their guitar lines are very similar. So, but their vocals and their lyrics are definitely more emotional. So they could be like for fans of the 1975, but also for fans of like Hippocampus or Coin, So I think it's just about sitting down and doing research and figuring that out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of kids in like suburbs who are like managing their friends, I think that's what they learn they have to do. The internet is such a resource. Like you can learn anything online now.
Yeah.
Which is bad for me and my terrible focus because I get distracted when I'm trying to learn things because it's on the internet.
The internet has too much. It has way too much, but it's fantastic.
I know, right?
But then I wind up learning about like crocheting at 2:00 in the morning when I need to be doing something else.
Me. Literally me.
So now I want to hear a little bit about the musician side of this. Specifically, if like when you're on tour, have you learned about like what other photographers are doing like well or wrong like for taking photos? Because I always find that interesting whenever I'm like working with a band and they go on tour and I'm like not with them. They're always like, the images look like this, and they're so used to something else. So I'm curious about like if you have any like kind of like points of view on like people taking photos of musicians from a musician standpoint.
For sure. I mean, I think for starters, no matter who comes to your show and what quality of photos they're taking, if you didn't properly hire them, you should be grateful for them even being there. Like, it doesn't matter if you like the photos or not. They're showing up and they're trying their best, and like that should be enough for you since you're not hiring them. And I think a lot of musicians don't really think about that. Mm-hmm. Like, they're like, oh, this isn't my style. But, like, you're not paying them to make it your style. You're paying them for them to practice. You're, like, they're there to practice because they care about your music, whatever. So, like, who cares?
It also opens them up to different styles, too. Like, if you're working with someone and you're used to them, it's like you're seeing yourself from a different, literally a different point of view, a different perspective.
100%. I think that a lot of photographers are either really good or really bad at this, but being conscious of genre. So, like, I hate the, like, typical singer-songwriter photos. Like, if I'm hiring someone, I'm making sure that their work is, like, fun. Because when you're an artist who, like, stands and sings and is lyrically focused, the photos are all going to be boring and they're all going to look the same if you're just taking them and editing the coloring. And so I think it's super important when you're shooting. And again, this is only referring to someone that an artist is paying. Like, I have no comments for someone doing stuff on their own, like, if that makes sense. But a lot of people have gone into prisms and like really properly like what's the word I'm thinking of, like properly doing like double exposures in Photoshop and like all these different things, or like those circle prisms, or like editing a singer-songwriter photo like a rock band, which I've seen, which is really cool, making them look like Polaroids, like all this different stuff that you can do that I think makes it a lot more interesting. Because other than like facial expressions, because like there's like, you can never go wrong with like a good photo of a singer-songwriter like smiling or something, but that like isn't like, if you're going to deliver a 20 photo gallery, in my opinion, only like 3 or 4 or 5 of them should be just like on stage basic photo for a quiet artist, because otherwise it's just boring. One photographer that I have worked with, she did a lot of really fun color editing, in the sense that like she properly split toned and made something look like not what it was before. Or like, I don't know if you know Briar Burns. They're incredible. We shot for the same pub in the US, like they did West Coast, I did East Coast. And seeing how they, like, it's like, what concert did you go to? You know, like, you want to make people feel something. And there's 2 routes to do that. 1, make them feel like they were there in the first row. And 2, completely turn it around and make it look like it's exactly your style. And so Briar is like wild at doing that in a way that I've never seen before. Caro, again, who does graphics for Bitch, a lot of the time, like, either she has or I have, or one of our friends have just taken basic photos I've color edited, and then she's done like fun things around it, whether it's like little doodles or like something like that, like just something to make it stand out. Like, if you want to, there's 2 ways to make a living as a touring musician. And this is assuming that you're chill, right? Because if you are not chill, nobody's ever taking you on tour. It's true. You have to be a bro. 1 is to be so good at capturing the moment. Like, you have to be like incredible. If someone's looking at that photo and they're like, I'm in the front row. Or you have to have a really cool, distinct style that nobody else is doing. And then otherwise, like, you're not, it's just not realistically going to work unless you have like friends who'll take you out. because there's so many people trying to do photography that you have to stand out somehow. Kind of like with pubs and with anything else. And unfortunately with music, like live music photography, there is a limited amount of seats at the table. Whereas like as a musician, I don't think there are. I think you and all your friends can be successful and it doesn't hurt anybody. But there's only so many big bands going on tour who can afford to pay you, you know?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point because, like, I don't tour, so there's, like, a lot of stuff.
Oh, really?
Touring.
You don't?
Yeah, I don't. And I just, like, I never want to leave my house. Like, that's...
Well, there you go.
But, like, when I'm talking to people that are touring and stuff, it's, like, you're literally putting yourself into a pool that has a ton of really talented people. So, like, I totally get it. You have to stand out. Like, if you look at my portfolio, I think even, like, versus yours, I kind of hit on what you're talking about, like, not doing, that my stuff is very simple, straightforward, like, capturing the moment. But I also don't work with a lot of, like, singer-songwriters. I work with people who are running across the stages, and I'm capturing,
yeah, you do more, like, rock and pop punk stuff, right? Cool, that's what I've seen.
So, like, I totally get the idea of, like, adding more style to it. And I think that there's pictures in your portfolio, if I remember correctly, that showed, like, little graphics and, like, doodles and stuff like that. And I love that. I think that's all super, like, I don't know, like, beautiful and captures my eye. It's just not something that I would personally do. So then it just kind of, like, helps separate you from, you know, everyone else in the industry. But it's so...
Oh, yeah, I have, like, one. I'm, like, looking at my portfolio and not remembering. Yeah, I have, like, a couple of randomly, like, thrown ones. But I think in general, I definitely more lean the way that you work as well. Like, I've had... And also, once you get into one tour or two tours, if you do a good job, you're, like, almost set. Like, I found they just come one after the other. Like, you do a good job with this band, their label likes you, they hire you for someone else. Do a good job with this other band, they tell their friends and they hire you. You know, it's, like, very... I've definitely had an unusual experience in the sense that I have had a really easy time getting touring jobs. But, yeah, I mean, it's, like, I definitely... Like, I've been told when Rolling Stone reached out to me when I was 17, like, they were like, your photos just look like I'm standing in the photo pit. And, like,
oh, that's fantastic.
If we're going, she's like, and they sent me to Gumball originally. And they're like, we want people to look at it and feel like they're standing where they're not allowed to be because it's so, visual. And I think that's what you do also. But if you do that, you have to be damn good at it. You know, there's only so many spots for that type of thing. So
yeah. For sure. I mean, I have so many things I want to ask you, but we've already been talking for like 35 minutes. And the one thing that I like wanted to dive into that we kind of talked a little bit before is about like, you kind of mentioned the like ageism side of it, where like you started the publication because you were so young. Have you faced any other like negative prejudices, or can you like elaborate on like what you've taken away from those experiences and learning to like make yourself stand out and like deal with any sort of negativity?
My favorite one is this publication in Brooklyn, not naming names, that I reached out to when I was like 17. And I really liked their stuff, and they were covering a lot of really cool shows. And I don't remember how they found out how old I was, but after already assigning me to a show like 3 days before, they were like, just realized you are not 21. Never mind, voiding contract. And I was like, why do you care? Especially because many venues, if you're press, they let you in, even if you're not 21. Some of them you have to leave after the set, but like, who cares? But like, it's not like you can't get in or something. Like, they just X you all over. Like, the amount of times I've walked into a bar feeling like a big black X, like, no idea. But like, I was like, okay, dude, whatever. And then like with Rolling Stone, for example, total fever dream. Like, I was what's the word I'm looking for? I was shooting a show at Terminal 5, which is like a 5,000 cap. And you know how like you're friendly in the photo pit with people, you like say hi, you exchange business cards, whatever. And this was a show where not a lot of people that I knew were at. And so I'm talking to this one lady, and she seems really nice, but, like, you could tell that she, like, wasn't used to photo pits. She obviously was a great photographer, but she wasn't used to, like, the crowded photo pits.
Okay.
And she was like, yeah, I work at an office usually, but, like, I like shooting and I have good experience. So once in a while when they can't find someone, they just send me out. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I'd love to, like, exchange info and, like, chat a little bit more about what that's about, because that seems really interesting. Because she was like, yeah, I work at a music office. So I was like, I don't know what it is. And then we lose each other, and, like, right as the last of the 3 songs are ending, she's like, oh, I forgot. Let's switch cards. And I just put it in my pocket. I didn't look at it, right? And I think I was, like, 16. So, of course, my dad came to pick me up. So I, like, leave the venue when I'm done, and I, like, sit down, and I look, somebody's poking me, so it's a business card in my butt. And I was like, oh, let me look at this. And she was the, like, associate editor at Rolling Stone. And I was like, what? And so then I was like, this is so cool, but nothing's going to happen. And this was in, like, October. And then fast forward to June. Okay, picture this. I'm sitting in my therapist's office. Oh, not June, like May. Sitting in my therapist's office waiting room. Okay. Being the angsty teenager that I am. And I get an email. And it says, like, photo opportunity, rollingstone.com. And I was like, okay, what bullshit is this? So I, like, opened the email. And I was like, they're scamming me. And then I, like, opened the actual email, and it was, like, from someone at Rolling Stone. And I was like, literally, what is this? Like, I'm, like, waiting for my therapist to come out, like, mess of a teenager getting this email. And so I was like, yeah, of course I'll do this. And there was, like, no awareness of age or, like, whatever. And I was working golf ball, and, like, second day, the editor who hired me was there. And so she was like, oh, I'd love to, like, meet really quickly. And so we're talking. And I was like, how do you even find my work? And she was like, one of my associate editors, after a show that you guys were at together, walked up to me in my office, slapped your card on my desk and said, if you don't hire this person, you're an idiot, but wait for a large job, because she thought I was so in demand as a 17-year-old that if they hired me for a singular concert, I'd say no, which is so ridiculous. But, like, whatever.
That's so funny. Oh,
and then,
God.
like, a couple months later, or somehow it came up that I was 17, and she was like, oh my God, like, she was like, literally the contracts you signed are illegal, but she, like, didn't, like, care, but it was more so, like, she was like, I had no idea, and she thought it was really, really cool, because she didn't know before. But, like, I have a feeling that if they knew, they probably wouldn't have reached out. Not necessarily because of the whole ageism thing, but more so because it requires a parent to sign and blah, 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 and, like, all this, like, more complicated stuff. But she thought it was super cool, and she was like, do you know you're the, like, youngest person to ever shoot for us on assignment? Like, Cameron Crowe was the writer, but they had never commissioned anybody under 22 to shoot for them before. So I was like, haha,
that's amazing.
Fun and famous. But yeah, I mean, in that experience, like, I wouldn't say this directly ageism, but it's definitely, like, I guess it's, like, low-key. Like, it's, like not on purpose ageism. Yeah. If that makes sense. It's, like, this is more complicated, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And then the thing with that publication, and, like, oh my God, the Mercury Lounge lady, like, knows who I am because she hates me so much because I came in underage so many times that literally every time I walked in, she would, like, roll her eyes at me. And I loved walking in there as a 21-year-old and her not being able to say anything about it anymore. So, like, there's, like, little pieces like that. I find that in the professional adult world, you hit 2 people. It's, oh my God, your work is so good. This is so cool that you're so young. Or you're so young, even though your work is good, blah, 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 blah. Which I think there's, like, with those people, sometimes it's a little bit of jealousy that you got started earlier than they did. And then I think it's also just the idea that professionalism is rooted in experience, and that experience is rooted in time rather than effort. Because you can have the same level of, like, work in a year that someone else does in 5 if you put yourself into it, you know? Yeah. I haven't had the, like, craziest experience with ageism, but I've definitely, like, seen it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's a thing that a lot of people, I guess, deal with, because now I think that everyone's getting started younger and younger. And, like, I think that it's fantastic. I started, though, when I was 21, and I was, like, going to shows, so, like, I never had any, like, issues. And then I started doing, like, the podcast and talking to people, and I was like, I had no idea that, like, ageism was a thing in the industry, because I never looked at it from a point of view of being, like, under bar age trying to get into a bar.
And also, the smaller the town that you're in, the more likely the venues are bars, and the more likely you are to experience ageism, I'm sure. Because, like, I grew up in New York City, and so the smaller gigs were bar shows. Like, anything under, like, 200 cap is likely a bar show. And, like, I shot some, but not, like, a ton of those. Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing was I was on tour with this band, and they're the sweetest people. I love them. But when we played Rough Trade, they were trying to give us issues about me not being 21. And so they came in to check everybody's IDs, and Charlie, who's the violinist, was like, just run to the stock room. Just go. And then so they checked everybody's IDs, and they gave the tour manager, like, all the passes. And, like, they signed all the passes to show that people are of age. And so then Charlie, like, ran into the stock room and, like, slipped me one of them. And she was like, just keep your hood up for, like, 5 minutes. And so, like, I have this pass on. Nobody, like, saw my face. And as the show started, it, like, wasn't an issue. And you could have totally fought them on the age thing, but it's such a pain in the ass. Just, like, get around it, you know?
Yeah.
But that's,
and it's
like,
so
was
unnecessary.
really funny.
Like, just kind of, like, okay, mark my hands with an X so I don't buy drinks, and then, like, we don't have this issue. You know?
I mean, also, like, it's not like you can order a drink without one of your hands on the bar. You can get a drink or pay for it without them seeing your hands, you know? It's like, I mean, I guess you could, like, rub it off, but, like, again, then that's on you, not the bar. Like, they did their job.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of like...
It's just so interesting. It's
Yeah,
unnecessary.
I, like, understand to an extent, having worked at a restaurant that is also a bar, being more careful when it's exclusively a bar. So if it's, like, just a bar and a venue, like, bar first, then venue, I can understand wanting to be a lot more careful, like putting a pass on someone or, like, something so they really, really know.
Yeah.
But also then as a young person, I think it's your responsibility to, before the night of the show, make sure it's okay. So, like, when you get your, like, approval, I don't know, like, a week before, call the venue and be like, hi, I'm media for, like, B and C show. I'm under 21, but I'm approved for media. Do you guys prefer that I get X? Do you prefer that I leave after the set? Like, what is best for you guys? And, like, I think that creates an environment where you're being responsible as a photographer. The band is being responsible to not bring someone in who could be a threat to the bar, and the bar has the awareness that there's someone there. Because if you just pop up at door, the person who manages the venue might not be there, and the door person's told one thing, and they can't just, like, not do it. And so then people get mad. But, like you know.
Being proactive and, like, reaching out to the venues, I think that's a great idea. I personally wouldn't have thought of that. I think that's fantastic advice.
The amount of times I see people really pissed that they get turned down night of gig, but, like, didn't say anything before. And I'm just kind of like, but can you really be pissed? Like, can you really? Because, the door people are just doing their job.
Yeah.
Like, why you're mad at someone for their minimum wage door job, like, at a gig because they were told something and they can't change it, and they're not going to call their boss at 10 p.m.? Like,
yeah.
It's one thing if it's occasionally an 18-plus venue, occasionally 21 and you're 20. But, like, if it's a proper bar, like, I think you also have a responsibility in that.
Yeah, I agree. So. Okay, so to wrap this all up, the last question I wanted to ask is just, like, share with us your best piece of advice that you've received, something that you'd want to pass on to people that are listening.
I think as a musician, the best thing I was ever told is you could put out something really, really great and people might not hear it. And you could either get mad or you could keep putting yourself out there, and eventually you might end up at the right place at the right time. But when you only have one chance to be at the right place at the right time, it might not work. But if you put 50 chances in, it might happen. So I think for me, like, that seems obvious, but that was, like, a super huge thing for me to conceptualize when I was told that as a musician.
Yeah.
And then within, like, photography and, like, everything else in music, I think, I really think at the end of the day, just, like, the advice of, like, don't let anger stop you. Like, don't, like, what would you do if you didn't have any fear or any anger? Like, you'd probably be, like, I don't know, like, if you weren't angry about being a woman in music, you'd probably be more successful. Like, that's also, like, super unpopular, that, like, not like you shouldn't be angry, but, like, you shouldn't let that anger affect your success.
Yeah.
You could blame other people for why you're unsuccessful, or you could figure out why and you could fix it.
Yeah.
You know? And, like, that's not me being, like, I never get angry, but I try to, like, compartmentalize and put the anger on a shelf and then be like, how do I do this better? if this is what I want, then I want it and I'm going to do it. I'm not going to let other people tell me what to do about it. You know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I love that. I think that's a great piece of advice. This was so much fun. I'm so happy.
Yeah, it was nice to like finally meet you. Right? Yeah. I know. After like a million years.
I know. And I feel like, yeah, we've either been Facebook friends or I've been following your stuff for, probably, I would say 3 to 4 years at least.
Oh, yeah, we've been Facebook friends for a long time.
And it's so funny. I'm like, hey, do you want to sit down with me and chat about photography now? Because that's just what I do and what I love. So I'm so happy that you got to sit down with me.
Thanks.
Really quickly. Can you shout out like where people can find you online and your social media?
Oh my
God, and all that?
Yes. Come stalk me. My full name is Mae Krell. And so like maekrell.com is my music, maekrellphoto.com is my photography, and then all my socials are just my full name.
Awesome.
So it shouldn't be too hard to find me, but I think my photography is harder to find than my music at this point. So it's just maekrellphoto.com.
Okay, awesome. Everyone go check it out because Mae's pretty cool. I have your website still open on my computer and I'm like staring at some of your photos and I'm just like, yeah, very cool. So nice. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I am so happy to have you and I hope that everyone listening had a great time hearing about your career and all of the stuff that you do in the music industry because it impresses me. Yeah, so I love it and hopefully I'll see you in the pit.